Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining with us. Hope you enjoyed a quick break. Thank you, Veronica, for assembling what a wonderful panel discussion and really highlighting the important needs of adolescent and young adult cancer survivors. And it's something that we will continue to address in our work. And I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your research and your insights with us. So next we have a workshop on self-care. And I'm really pleased to introduce Taylor Pinkston, who created the Heart Advocate to help individuals choose self-love as a coping skill for mental health and healing. The Heart Advocate provides individual virtual self-love therapy and programs. And Taylor speaks about the importance of self-worth, self-love in mental health, and how to practice self-care. She has been supporting young adult cancer survivors through her workshops with Young Adult Survivors United in Pittsburgh for the last 2 years. We are thrilled to be able to share the workshop with all of you. I'm pleased to introduce Taylor.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I appreciate you. Thank you, Veronica, for inviting me to come and connect with each of you on a very important topic called self-care. And I am excited to dive in with each of you. This is an interactive workshop, as Veronica and Shelley have mentioned. Please, if you are interested in doing what we call in the self-love world heart work, grab a notebook, grab a pen, grab your notes on your phone, start a new note, and also use the chat. I am used to this workshop being very interactive. So for those of you who are here and on and are facilitating or hosting, you're a part of this too. Grab your notebook and pens because everybody needs self-care. So what you can expect from me today is, yes, a foundational understanding of what self-care is. We're going to talk about what this buzzword is all about. I'm going to give you 6 ways you can take care of you and assist in how to focus on individual self-care needs. Yes, we are in a collective and a group here today, but self-care is very much about you as a soul and individual person. So we're going to get really intimate in that way. We're going to definitely talk about how to prioritize and give yourself permission to practice self-care, but also give yourself the credit for some self-care that you're probably already engaging in, but maybe you never categorized as self-care. And finally, we are absolutely going to create a self-care plan together. There will be time at the end for additional Q&A. I want to allow space throughout. So if thoughts, questions come up as we are going through, absolutely use the chat so that I can chime in with you all. I like to dive in, okay? When we're talking about anything related to self-love, which self-care is, we got to do the hard work, okay? We got to dive in, we got to have the conversations. I'm certified through the path of self-love to talk about self-love, and one key part is self-care. And we'll dive more into that to come, but grab your journal, grab your pen, write these questions for yourself, and whether you begin to respond and create answers or not, the most important part in anything, or the beginning of anything, is the awareness and the honesty. So being able to check in with yourself, to be honest, to be aware, is the first step in practicing self-care. What do you need? So what are you currently doing to take care of yourself? What does self-care mean to you in your life right now? What does it look like? What are you currently doing? What are you no longer doing? Maybe there are things that you were like, I used to, I don't know, go out hiking, or I used to love to swim and I'm not really swimming anymore. What is it that you are no longer doing that you feel that you're not doing to take care of yourself? And does self-care feel unfulfilling or overwhelming in any way? So that's another question that I want you to be very mindful and intentional in answering. If you respond yes to either, why? Why do you think that is? Why does self-care feel so overwhelming or unfulfilling? Is it lack of information? Is it confusion on what it even means? Is it just like, oh, there's just not enough time in the day to take care of me, and I'm so busy taking care of other people and showing up for other people? What is it? Because there is a reason. Please take the time to write these questions down for yourself. And feel free to use the chat if anything comes up. What stands out to you in these questions when you're thinking about your own self-care? Does anyone have any thoughts? The questions seem simple, but when you really think about it, there's a lot of depth that can come from these responses. Because some of you here are, I'm sure, caregivers, people showing up for people. Maybe you're a parent. We're all giving, and spending a lot of time focusing on that. But we don't actually spend a lot of time sitting with ourselves and thinking about our own needs, wants, desires, what nourishment looks and feels like for ourselves. I just want to give enough time for these questions to be written, just so that you have them for yourself. I'm seeing some comments. I feel that my own self-care is overwhelming for me because I'm always making sure my kids, spouse, and family are okay. Yep, that sounds about right. It can feel like another thing to do. It becomes this chore, and it's the opposite. That defeats the purpose, right? And how do we redefine that for ourselves? How can we take away that feeling of it's a chore, another thing to do? Some of my best self-care is found through helping others. I see breathing techniques, meditation, yoga. Self-care doesn't always feel overwhelming to me. It makes me feel guilty sometimes. Yes, we are absolutely going to talk about all of the things that are in the chat. And thank you all for sharing your thoughts and feelings around it, because it's so important to have these discussions because we're not often having them. Let's move forward. Right now, I want you all to spend some time, again, in that awareness and honesty stage, so to speak, of this work. And look at these bullet points of the signs of a weak self-care and think about what sounds like you right now in your life. Type it in the chat, call it out. This sounds like me. I don't know what to do about that, or I want to do something about that. But what sounds like you? When I first saw this list of the signs of a weak self-care, it was like somebody like, ooh, it felt like, wow. You know, a lot of these were valid in my life in the moment. And I've been doing this work for almost 5 years now. And there are still things on this list that resonate with me, that call out to me, are things that I want to work on for myself. Double booking. Double booking, yes. Double booking yourself is signs of a weak self-care, absolutely. Never feeling like you're doing enough. Negative self-talk, unrealistic expectations. These things are relatable, right? Like, you're not alone. You are not alone. And you also can do something about these things. There's something that you can do. Having a hard time resting or relaxing, absolutely. Comparing yourself to other people or even your past self. Compassion fatigue is a new buzzword that I've been, buzzwords that I've been hearing lately. Being caregivers, giving compassion all the time, that you begin to feel depleted yourself and struggle to extend compassion because you're giving it so much. It's a sign that self-care is missing. One that I hear the most, and it's coming up a lot in the chat, is never feeling like you're doing enough. Out of all the things you do, and I'm sure if you wrote it down, it would be long lists of things that you do just in a 24-hour period, and we still feel like we're not doing enough. But again, we could do something about these things. Here's what you need to know about self-care, that it's for you. Self-care is for everyone. We all deserve the nourishment that it takes to take care of self. Self-care is a part of self-love. We're going to talk about that other buzzy word that you've probably been hearing, self-love, working on my self-love Saturday, self-love Sunday. We're going to talk about why the idea that there's self-care and then self-love is that's not it. It's not two different things. Self-care has privilege, the knowledge, the access, the affordability. Not having those things can hinder one's practice. There are certain self-care activities that cost a certain dollar amount. That's just the way it is. But not everybody even knows what self-care means. So you being here today and gaining this information, there's privilege in that. And I absolutely understand my own privilege in knowing what I need to self-care moment to moment, because it changes. There's a privilege in that. And not everybody grew up in a household. Not everybody had family, friends, community that uplifted and understood and encouraged self-care. And so those feelings that it's overwhelming, unfulfilling, and overindulgence or selfish comes into play. Self-care is an action, something you have to do, but it's not just physical. It is about nourishing all of you. But that doesn't mean that it's always pleasurable and glamorous or simple or easy. Self-care is not selfish. And yes, any self-care activity you can neglect or overindulge in. And we're going to talk about that. So as we go through, I want you to think about these things. Of course, write down anything that stands out to you. Maybe you're already starting to think about self-care in a different way. And that is my hope for today, that everyone walks away taking away something that enhances your self-care practice, that validates you, validating you and saying that it is okay for me to self-care my way. Any thoughts, questions, anything before I keep going? Okay. Remember, keep the chat going if things come up. I would love to hear from you all. We honestly cannot talk about self-care without talking about self-love. We can't talk about self-love without talking about self-worth. and the value that you place on your life. So if self-love was a tree, okay, and you can feel free to use this beautiful tree behind me, my handy dandy tapestry from college that I just love. If self-love was the tree, okay, the roots of that tree would be your self-worth. How you feel about your innermost self is the roots to your tree, or the roots to your tree. What does your tree look like based off of your roots and how you see you, the value that you place on your life? Strong enough, powerful enough, worthy enough, capable enough. What are your roots saying? Do you place a value on your life enough to self-love, to self-care? And so if self-love is a tree, the roots of that tree are your self-worth. The branches are these 10 things that each of us need to engage in self-love. And one of them is self-care. Very important branch of self-love, but it's not the only one. There's no separation here. Self-love is the umbrella, and we practice these individual branches in order to strengthen our worth, and the cycle continues. So self-love is a path, a practice, and a choice. We have to choose to practice self-love. We have to choose to practice self-care. We have to choose to empower ourselves, to accept who we are, to be compassionate and forgiving of self, to express ourselves, to trust ourselves, and really listen, to be aware and honest of who we are, to respect and honor all that we are. These are choices. And self-care absolutely is a choice as well. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. This is important, and it's neglected. And as the heart advocate, I'm dedicated to the hearts of those that I connect with. I'm dedicated to my own. I said a long time ago, before I had my 6-year-old daughter, who was in the pictures, definitely bigger than she is now, no more. No more settling, no more beating myself up when I make a choice that I don't like the outcome to. No more being unkind to my mind, my body, and my soul. No more holding things in when I want to speak out. And if self-love is anything, it is a no more kind of space. The things that you want to defy. If any of these branches stand out to you, and you are thinking, I want me some of that, I want you to write down the definition that you see here. This is probably as short and sweet as it gets. If I was to write the full definitions of each of these branches of loves, it wouldn't fit on one slide. As you can see, we see self-care as taking care of mind, body, and soul. What stands out to you? It may be self-care, but it also may be another branch of self-love, something that you want to lean into more. The thing about these branches is they all connect. So when you engage in self-care, you might also be engaging in expressing yourself, or respecting yourself, or having confidence in who you are, or accepting all you are. The way that we take care of mind, body, and soul transfers into each of these definitions in some shape or form. Nicole asked a great question. Do you think that some of these get better at doing as we grow older? I think I know what you're saying. I think things strengthen. I'll say strengthen instead of better. I think we strengthen in these areas when we choose to practice them, because wisdom doesn't always come with age. And so it takes an active practice. It takes an active checking in, and it takes an awareness of this. There are people who've never heard self-love being talked about this. So how can they practice something they've never learned? Which is one of the major reasons why I offer free services and support. On Facebook, I have a virtual support group called Healing Over Everything, where we talk about this stuff, because not everybody has access and can afford to go to the symposium or the training or the workshop or the therapy. But we all need these things. And I truly see self-love as the bridge, or see myself as the bridge between the self-love and the mental health space, because these are the things that strengthen well-being, and well-being is a part of our mental health. Thank you for that question. I hope you wrote down some branches that really call out to you or are calling out to you. We're going to move forward. Self-care is your choice. So now that you know, you can't unknow. Okay, you're here. You're talking to the heart advocate. She's telling you all about self-love, self-care. You can't unknow. You're going to walk away with something. You're going to know what you need. And yes, that will change, but it's always going to be your choice. And we know what unhealthy coping skills look like. We know how we have overindulged and neglected certain activities. And it's about finding your balance and what works for you, mind, body, and soul every day. Not everybody operates on a routine and a daily schedule. Some people do. But even in the self-care plan that we're going to create towards the end of this workshop, that will change. And I hope it does, because that means you're checking in with yourself, that you're actually taking the time to say, what do I need today? The routine I did yesterday worked for me. Maybe that's not what I need today. Maybe I need a different routine today. Mind, body, and soul every day. Each of you are going to create a self-care plan. You'll be creating 6 lists for each type of self-care. So the 6 types of self-care that everyone needs. On my website, I have a lot of information on self-care and what it looks like. And one of them, it talks about these 6 types that we're going to go through today. So you're going to be creating 6 small lists, where 1 to 3 activities is under each list, no more than 3. And that is intentional, no more than 3. I want you to think about what you need. So when you see the list, you're going to see some things that you maybe haven't done in a while and want to try again. Something that's just like, I've been saying I'm going to do this, but I just haven't done it. That means you need it. But you're also going to see things that you do habitually. Avoid your habituals right now. And our habituals change too. Sometimes it's like, I've been really good at drinking my 8 ounce glasses of water every day. And then that might change over time. And you might need to add it to your needs list. But if you're doing it habitually, don't put that on your list. So again, 1 to 3 self-care activities under each list, and there will be 6 of them. Please let me know if what I'm saying doesn't make sense. And we're going to go through this together one by one. We're going to talk about the 6 types of self-care that every single one of you needs. Any thoughts before we dive in? Okay. If they come up, don't hesitate to ask. So here are the 6 types of self-care. Yes, there are more. I am not a guru. I do not believe that there's a such thing as self-love experts. And that includes self-care, because most of us did not grow up knowing what this stuff was. I mean, I think I heard the word self-love in 2014, 2015. I've been doing the work, yes, active, but I still have room to grow. We're constantly going to change. And with that evolution, what you need to take care of you is going to change. But these 6 types of care, you're always going to need at every stage of life. You're going to need something from each type of care. And we're going to categorize what they are. So these are your 6 lists. I hope you wrote them all down in your journal. And then again, you're going to put 1 to 3 things under each list. Is everybody ready? I'm just going to assume that all thumbs are up, okay? Let's dive in. So we're going to talk about first the most popular type of self-care. If you Google it, if you type it on social media, you'll probably see something from this list. It comes up the most, it's the most marketable. And in some ways, it can be expensive, some of these things. And again, not everybody has the same access and affordability to the same type of self-care. So always recognize your privilege. But you see things like getting your sleep at night, and going to the doctors and dentist, and hygiene, and pampering, meditation, eating food, drinking water. These are the ways we take care of our physical bodies. Yes, physical self-care. Earlier, when you did the heart work, when I asked about, what self-care are you currently doing, no longer doing, you probably put physical self-care activities, because it's just what we think about first. You say self-care and you think about these types of things, moving your body. This is what comes up, right? But there's more than this. Just as important, just as valuable, but there are other ways to take care of you as well. And we're going to talk about them all. Any thoughts about physical self-care? Make sure you're writing your 1 to 3 things that you're not doing habitually, but you've been saying you need, you want, you desire. Make sure you write them down. But any thoughts, ideas, anything that's coming up around physical self-care? Let me give you all just a few minutes to look at the list, to write things down. I'm being mindful of time because I want to make sure that we get through each type of care. Okay, let's move into our next type. Oh, I think I see something in the chat. It's interesting to think that going to the doctor or the dentist is self-care, isn't it? Isn't it, Veronica? And so this whole time you've been doing it and never giving yourself credit for it, right? But isn't that you taking care of your physical body? Yes. Absolutely it is. We got to start giving ourselves credit for this work as well. Because when we don't, we're telling ourselves that we're not doing enough. And in fact, you probably have been engaging in self-care in a way that has been great, but you just haven't acknowledged yourself for it. Yes, thank your dentist. Let's move in to emotional self-care, another important type of self-care that maybe doesn't get talked about all the time. Things like asking for help and laughing out loud and expressing yourself, going to therapy, going to counseling, self-reflection, affirmation, journaling, crying when you start to cry, and giving yourself the permission to feel your feelings and be a human being. These are ways that we take care of our emotional selves, our emotional well-being. What's calling out to you? What's 1 to 3 that you need Write them down under your emotional self-care list. Any thoughts? Anything coming up? Oh, positive affirmations. Yes. I mean, I think affirming is really important because sometimes you wake up in the morning and the first thing out of your mouth is, and so that kind of sets the tone for your whole day. So I think affirmation in the morning is really powerful. What I like to do or say, some common ones are I am enough, I'm good enough, I am doing enough. That's one that I say a lot. I'm enough, I'm good enough, I'm doing enough. That's an affirmation. May I show up for myself today. May I listen to myself and give myself what I need. I am worthy, I am powerful, I am enough. I'm capable. And repeating them like mantras is really powerful as well. You could even, some of the things that you all are putting in the chat. May I ask for help today? May I give myself the permission to ask for help, because that doesn't mean that I'm weak or incapable or not good enough. You weren't created on the earth alone. You're here with other people. But I think it's hard to ask for help because we're told that we're supposed to have all the answers and we're supposed to be experts and we're supposed to be perfect. And so perfection is always tied into the opposite of this self-love work. Fix yourself. You're not good enough. You're not doing enough. These are perfectionist things. The critique, the judgment, the shame, the pressure that we put on ourselves to be perfect at all times. And it's unattainable. So we're constantly feeling like we're reaching or grasping at something that we'll never get to. When in fact, you were created to take up space and exist and to use the gifts and strengths that you have to impact the world around you, but also give that energy to yourself. Because how can you sustain when you don't ask for help? How can you avoid burnout if you don't take the time to take care of you? You will burn out. And compassion fatigue will be prominent. Practical self-care is another type of self-care that isn't always acknowledged, but very important. I don't know about you all, but when I organize, when I clear my space, when I plan and prep for the week, I feel better. And a lot of times it's like it's just like my mind is less restless because I've taken care of these things. So I have more space to take care of some other things that I want to take care of. So attending workshops, okay. Self-care, you're doing it right now. But also doing the dishes and doing the laundry and vacuuming and cleaning out your car. All of these things can be self-care as well. And you need them. And you will feel better after doing them, even if you don't feel like doing them. So write down your 1 to 3 needs under your practical self-care list. let's move into our next type of self-care, mental self-care. I've seen major shifts since the pandemic on mental self-care and the intentionality around understanding what that is, and advocating for therapy and support groups and rest, and even more intentional with staff, with administration and staff, seeing more intention to give the staff permission to take care of themselves and self-care retreats and things like that. Very important for the mind. You may notice some repetition. Rest was on the physical self-care list, and here it is again. And that is because one activity can be multiple types of care. Something like meditation could be, physical self-care, emotional self-care, mental self-care, and spiritual self-care, which we're going to talk about next. Using your vacation and personal time. Monitoring who you follow on social media. So if you're a social media person, what type of energy are you taking in on social media? How's that impacting your mind? Again, I have a support self-help group on Facebook. Anybody 18 and older, if you answer the questions and just want a space to have like minds who are all focused on self-love, mental health, and healing, you are welcome to join that space. All are welcome. This week, we're talking about burnout. So that's our topic. Each week, we have a different topic in Healing Over Everything. But what do you need? Add your responses to your mental self-care list. I want to also be very clear that my lists are not indefinite. That you may be thinking of a self-care activity that maybe you do not see just because something's coming up based off of what you're seeing on the slides. What do you need? This is not about what Taylor thinks you need. This is about you taking the time to check in mind, body, and soul and say, how have I been neglecting myself? What do I want to give myself? How can I fit myself on my to-do list, on my calendar? Because you matter that much. Spiritual self-care is another type of care. And it looks differently for everyone, just like each of these. What you need, what I need are two different things, and that is okay. What do you need to take care to nourish your soul? What does spiritual self-care look like for you? We're going to get into our final type of self-care, the one that I feel is neglected the most. It's just my personal opinion. Social self-care. Struggling to say no when you really need to say no. These are the ways that you can take care of your social self. Taking breaks from social media, turning off your notifications, something about that ding. Decluttering social media. Again, who are you following? What type of energy are you taking in when you're scrolling? Reducing your scrolling and turning on the screen monitoring things on the phone. But also things like calling someone that you love, someone that uplifts you, encourages you, surrounding yourself with loving and respectful relationships, creating boundaries. These are all ways that you take care of the social being that you are. Go ahead and write your 1 to 3 things. I said earlier that self-care is not always pleasurable, but there are pleasurable self-care activities. Absolutely, there are. We deserve those too. It's not always about deep nourishment. Sometimes it is about joy. And so here's some pleasurable self-care activities that you can plug under any list if you need to fill some gaps. If you only wrote one thing, but you're like, somebody that loves to watch comedy shows, or you love karaoke or picnics, and hiking is something you love, or you can get specific and add these things to your self-care plan because it's yours. So it can be what you want it to be. We are acknowledging ourselves and giving ourselves credit. We're also challenging ourselves to create a plan that is realistic and that meets our needs, that is balanced, that is not, it's not an opportunity to think about what you think the list should be. It's about what you need it to be and holding yourself accountable to what you put on your plan. Any thoughts, anything that came up just going through the 6 types of self-care that everybody needs? Carol, I'm really glad to hear that this was helpful. Now's the time to just review your plan. Do you have 1 or 3 things under each? Is it realistic but not habitual? Is there anything missing? Are you still thinking like, something's missing from your self-care plan? And how will you hold yourself accountable to it? And I am going to give you all some tips because I think it's important to walk away with the how. We talked about like what self-care is, what it looks like. You created a plan, but it's like, okay, yeah, I wrote this plan. I have it all written down, but how? Because I have responsibilities. I have things that take up time, and there's, potentially 8 hours out of the day where you sleep, which is self-care. So how, right? How do we hold ourselves accountable to ourselves, to this amazing plan that you wrote down? Veronica, great question. Is the goal for all self-care to be habitual? I love that question. What I would say to that is the goal for self-care is that you deserve it, that you give it to yourself willingly, that you make that commitment to self and say, I deserve it and it's okay that I'm engaging in self-care, and to give yourself the permission for things to change. Because your habituals may change. They will. I'm sure they will. A year from now, you could do this entire workshop with me again, and you're going to write down different stuff. Your habituals are going to change. So it's not necessarily that they would become habitual, but what would become habitual is that you check in with yourself. That's the goal. The goal is that you check in with your self-care needs and that you create a plan for you based off of your needs and attempt to hold yourself accountable to those things without trying to be perfect, because you're going to change. Life is going to get in the way of your plan, of your routine, of your schedule. But what do you need then? And that's absolutely something that I practice in this work. I've seen a lot of people try to self-love or self-care perfectly, and it does not work. It goes against this work and what we're talking about. So I hope that answered the question. Again, the goal is not for these activities to become habitual, but that you check in with yourself habitually. Carol said, I'm doing some of the things on the list already and love the prompts to think of things I'm not doing at present. Absolutely. Glad to hear that, Carol, because that's what I've been saying, and that's what it's all about, right? That we give ourselves some credit. I hope that each of you gave yourself a little bit of credit today. My tips to each of you is that you put yourself on your calendar. If you're wondering, like, okay, how do I get started? What do I do? Well, sometimes you actually have to write your name. You have to write Veronica or Carol. You have to write your name on your calendar and put the activity that you're going to engage in. Sometimes that works. Sometimes we need to set an alarm in our phones. You know, I have an alarm in my phone right now that every 30 minutes it says, drink some water. For me, I'm working and flowing that I can forget to drink my water. So I need that reminder. It's about what I need. It's not about, doing that activity perfectly. So sometimes you have to set an alarm. Put yourself in your calendar, put yourself in your planner, set an alarm, and maybe start with one thing. Maybe think about this week. It's Monday. Some of you are probably already thinking, I need to get my whole list done every week by the end of the week. That is not what the Heart Advocate is saying to you. What I am saying to you is that you can start with something. You have your plan. What's one thing from your plan that you can give yourself? How can you be compassionate with your self-care practice and it not be so rigid to the point that it does start to feel overwhelming? Because it will. That pressure that you put on yourself to self-care perfectly all the time is making you avoid self-care because it feels overwhelming to you. But if you just focus on one thing at a time, or by moment, okay, look at my plan. Rest is something I need. I got a 30-minute little block. I'm going to give myself this and actually take the time to rest or meditate or do some yoga or just get outside and sit in the sun. Or call somebody I've been meaning to call for a long time, or schedule that doctor's appointment that I've been meaning to schedule. Take my lunch break. These are things that you deserve, that you may not be giving yourself, that you need. And yes, check in with your self-care plan. Go back to it. It will change. But you kind of have like a foundational idea of what you need right now in this moment. And so if you go back to it in a month, that may change. Add stuff, take stuff away. You might have started doing something from your plan habitually where you don't need to write it down anymore. It's habitual. I see a question. What are some strategies for holding yourself accountable without self-shame? Like the guilt of doing something for self? I need more for that question. What are some strategies for holding yourself accountable without self-shame? Give me a little bit more, and then I think I'll know what the question is answering. Yay, Carol, permission to not be perfect. No, that is not the goal. Oh, okay. So the question around strategies for reducing self-shame with the accountability. So you get to the end of the week, you said you were going to go on a 30-minute walk and you didn't do it. And your internal body just wants to beat yourself up for it. How we work on that is being compassionate with yourself, acknowledging that long list of things that you did during the week, acknowledging the barriers that went against the things that you wanted to do to take care of you, the pleasurable activities that you wanted to engage in that would nourish your mind, body, and soul that you couldn't get to, acknowledging that life is not perfect and that routines sometimes get interrupted by life, that you're not a robot, that nobody can push a button on you and just press go and everything is just going to line up and work out. You're a human being. And sometimes our mood gets in the way. Our mental health gets in the way. Sometimes it's like, I know that I have been binge watching TV all week, but I'm that's just where I am right now. I know what I need to take care of myself, but right now I'm just not in that headspace. I think a lot of this work is giving yourself the permission to be a human, to be imperfect, to take time, to take up space, to not always be on. Because in the reality, all of you have a lot of responsibility. And it feels like self-care can't happen because of all of those responsibilities. So be kind to yourself. Be kind, be understanding, be patient, just like you are with everybody you work with, just like you are with your clients, just like you are with your family and friends. Be just as patient, understanding, and kind with yourself. Because you're worthy of taking good care of. Each and every one of you, no matter what stage you are in life, you deserve self-care. It's going to change over time, but try to give yourself something. Just one thing. Any questions? I want to thank each of you for taking part in the Self-Care Matters workshop today. Again, I'm Taylor Pinkston. I'm the heart advocate. I take self-love with me everywhere I go. I believe that self-love is a coping skill for mental health, for healing, and that each of us deserve self-care and self-love. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being a part today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please follow me on social media. Again, Healing Over Everything is a safe space and support group for anyone 18 and older that just wants to know more about self-love and just be surrounded with that kind of energy. Sometimes you just want to go to a space on social media where it's just helpful, a helpful, encouraging, supportive, positive vibe. And that's definitely what Healing Over Everything is.
Thank you, Taylor. We really appreciate this. This was great. And I want to thank everybody that was chiming in on the chat and making this interactive. I loved all the different lists because I thought it was helpful to see both things I'm already doing and then the things I need to do. So, because I think you're right, like sometimes we forget that we're already doing some of this and we need to give ourselves credit for that, even when we're looking at other things we can do. And thanks also for, reminding us it's okay not to be perfect at it because it's hard.
Yes. Thank you.
You're taking care of other people and jobs and family and all of that.
Yeah, each of you matters just as much as the people that you take care of and the work that you do. And I hope that you remember that.
Thank you.